Thank you. Awesome. All right. Looks like we're slowing down, so we can probably get started in just a minute. For anyone who just joined, if you want to throw in the chat where you're calling in from, or if you've used Hello Prenup, if you have any questions throughout as well, feel free to throw those in a chat. If you want them as anonymous, you can send them to any of us, myself, Anna, Hannah, Julia, or Lauren, and we'll keep an eye on that for the Q&A at the end. So as you have questions, you can throw those in the chat too. We are going to get started in just a moment, so I will get us settled in here. Yes, we will get it. We will be recording here. Yep. Wonderful. All right. New York. Awesome. Awesome to hear that you've used Hello Prenup too. All right. Lauren, whenever you want to share your screen, feel free. I'll go ahead and get us started in about a minute or so. Joining from Boston. Oh, Megan, so great to hear you've used Hello Prenup too. Amazing. All right. Once again, welcome. So good to have you all here together. My name is Anna, and I am with the Women's Social Club. I have the pleasure of kicking us off and handing it over to our fantastic hosts. We've got a great collaboration tonight. We are so excited to team up because we're so well aligned in this idea of bringing together great women, of feeling empowered, and just really being able to use those resources and leverage the community around you. So again, so glad to be here with you all. Feel free to use the chat throughout. You can ask any questions in there, send them to us if you want them anonymous, or just kind of cheer along in the chat as well. Always good to see the engagement there too. But again, so grateful to be here with you all. Thanks for taking the time to join. I am going to hand it over to Julia and Lauren from Hello Prenup, and we will get started here. Take it away.
Amazing. You want me to go for it, Julia?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it,
Okay,
Lauren.
well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We're so excited to collaborate with the Women's Social Club and to really bring prenups into your world. Today, we're really excited to talk about how do you approach a prenup, and to give you guys a little bit more background into what prenups are and why you should consider them. So Julia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Julia. I am the CEO and founder of Hello Prenup, and a Massachusetts family law attorney. I am also located in Boston. So everyone in Boston, hello. Lauren, I'll let you continue.
Yes, and hello, I'm Lauren Lavender. I am the Chief Marketing Officer of Hello Prenup. And I'm also a traditional prenup survivor, which means that in the wild, I have actually gotten a prenup. I've actually gotten a divorce and I've survived the process. So I'm here to share some stories about that and to give you a little bit more relatability into what goes along in a prenup. And Hannah, would you like to introduce yourself?
I was muted. Yes. I'm Hannah Weisberg. So I'm the founder of WSC, the Women's Social Club. And essentially, we are a membership-based community that makes it easier for women to connect with new friends. So we have an online community app platform where we have message boards, directories, meetup calendars, and we have teams in every city. But we thought it would be such a great collaboration to have Lauren and Julia join us and talk about this process, because a lot of the people that we have in our community are somewhere in their life cycle where this is applicable to them. And the way we've kind of presented it is that, you know, even if you're not in a relationship, it's never too early to learn and, you know, the value of your assets and how to protect yourself and things like that. So I'm excited to learn more as well. And thank you guys for teaming up with us.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah. So really quick, I know we already gave a debrief on who WSC is, but are there specific chapters or anything that's happening at WSC that you want to let our prenup members know about, Hannah?
Sure. So we have 37 markets that we have active chapters in. And the way that we have active chapters is each chapter has its own team. So it's a local team that hosts local in-person meetups. It varies in size depending on, how big the chapter is. But typically it's going to be between 3 and 6 team members. Some of our larger cities have more team members than that. But generally speaking, most of our chapters have between 3 to 5 meetup options per month. Having team members host them is one of the things I think that differentiates us from other social communities, because you have someone there that is specifically planning, organizing, and running it. You're not going to have anyone no show or flake or any of those things. It's very organized. You also have someone to welcome you in and introduce you to other people as well. So that's been really helpful, and especially when you're coming alone for the first time, because all of us have gone solo to the first one, not knowing anyone, and even going now, we always have new people join. So having a person to look to kind of break the ice a little bit during those meetups. And we also keep them really small. So also what differentiates us is we host more intimate size meetups where it's like between 5 and 10 people for most of our events. But yes, as I mentioned, we have an app, and that's where we plan and host all of our things. And you can find out more about us and kind of see clips and video from real meetups that we're doing in these different chapters on our socials. So we have Instagram and TikTok, and both of those are at Women's Social Club.
Amazing. Thank you.
All right. Well, Hannah, thank you for that, because I'm super excited to join your Boston chapter and come to meetups. So, all right, let's talk about prenups. So by way of background, HelloPrenup is the #1 prenup platform for creating an agreement in hours instead of months, and for a fraction of the cost of traditional methods. So how did HelloPrenup come to be? Well, I am a family law attorney in Massachusetts, and I was talking to, when I was working in a law firm, talking to potential prenup clients, and they all kind of said the same thing, right? They really didn't want to hire a divorce lawyer, right? They were like, we figured out what we want in this agreement. Why do we have to hire you? They didn't want to spend thousands of dollars on it, which the retainer at the time was $3,500. And they didn't want it to take months. And my firm at the time required a minimum of 3 months to even start this agreement. And so I wanted to create a solution that was a little bit more user-friendly and allowed couples to take the autonomy back into their own hands, right? Because you're getting married, you should be able to talk about this together instead of just through attorneys. So HelloPrenup has grown tremendously in the last couple of years since we were on Shark Tank in 2021. And we're really, really proud of how much we've grown. We're now the #1 source for all things prenups on the internet. We've protected over $5 billion in assets, and that's not including businesses. Businesses are another $7.5 billion. And we're in 45 states and counting. And so, as it says here, our mission is to help every couple get on the same page prior to marriage so that they can have longer, happier, more transparent relationships. In terms of what is a prenup? Well, a prenup is a legal document. I like to say it's just as much an emotional document as it is a legal one. And it allows couples to divide how they would want their assets in the event of a divorce. So not only can you choose how you want to hold your assets during the marriage. So if you have premarital assets, you want those to remain separate, you can do that. Or, for example, if you own a home and you want the appreciation of that home during the course of your marriage to be marital or community property, you can do that as well. All of this can be included in a prenup. Something else that people often ask about, one of our most popular questions is, can I include inheritance, or should I include inheritance in a prenup? This is something that is kind of misunderstood. Most people think that, inheritance is automatically separate. Why would you need to include it in a prenup? It's mine, it's coming from my parents. Well, that's actually not the case. So in many states, inheritance, if received during the marriage, will be considered marital property, indivisible in the event of a divorce. A prenup, helps solve for that, right? So there are no questions. You are fully transparent with your spouse about how you want to hold your assets and what would happen to those assets in the event of a divorce, which is the D word that we don't like to talk about.
Well, and another thing too, Julie, just to tack onto that is debt. So not just that beautiful house that you might have, but like, what if you guys have some student loans or there's something you don't want to bring into the marriage that you would put on your partner? A prenup is another good way to make sure that you're keeping your debt separate as well.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Lauren. A lot of people say, and this is actually like perfect for fact versus fiction. A lot of people suggest, well, I don't have anything, right? I'm getting married young. I don't have anything. All I have is debt. Like, why do I need a prenup? It can't protect anything. And that's not true, because you are likely to have assets in the future. And you do want to protect your spouse from debt, right? And debt can be absorbed into the marital estate in certain circumstances. So I always say, even if you don't have a prenup, you have a prenup, because your state law, statute, case law will govern what happens to your assets in the event of a divorce. So why not take the power into your own hands and decide with a prenup? A prenup is not planning for a divorce. It's planning for a happy, long-lasting, transparent marriage. And I think that a lot of people think, well, don't I have to go through an attorney? Isn't that required? You don't have to. Now, some states have certain requirements that you have to hire an attorney, for example, in California, to waive spousal support. Some states like Massachusetts say it's important to have an attorney. It's not statutorily required, but if there are unfair circumstances at the time of the divorce, whether or not you had an attorney may be considered. So HelloPrenup makes it really, really easy, right? Because we don't make you choose. You can go through the entire process, create a draft prenup, and then you can add on an attorney should you choose to do so. And you can do so at an affordable price. So it's very accessible for everybody. So prenups have become so popular. And if you talk to me about 15 years ago, I would say, I see prenups here and there. Like, people occasionally get them who have large inheritances or trusts. Now everybody is getting prenups, and to the tune of 47% of millennials. And why do I think this is happening? Well, I think this is happening because, first of all, we're getting married later, right? We're getting married. I think the average age of marriage is now like 31 or 33, right? And so by that age, you have accumulated stuff, usually, whether that's debt, whether that's your first condo that you bought, whether that's that business that you started, whether that master's degree, student debt. And so you have something to protect in either case. So that's one reason. A second reason is the great wealth transfer. Boomers are transferring down over $60 trillion in wealth to their millennial and Gen Z kids. The best way to protect that wealth is with a prenup. And then I think the other really salient fact to note is that over 24% of millennials are children of divorce. So we've been through it. We have seen what happens when a marriage breaks down in a really negative and painful way and what the fallout of that looks like. We want to do it differently than our parents did it, because we want to have those conversations before marriage so that our marriage is happy and long-lasting. All right. So again, if you don't have a prenup, you still have a prenup, because your state will decide what happens to your stuff for you. And generally speaking, there are two kind of schools of thought around division of assets. Now, community property is one of them, and that's states like California or Texas. I think there are 9 total community property states. Don't quote me on it. And generally, what a community property state says is that property and debt acquired during the marriage will be split 50-50 between partners. And assets that were owned premaritally before you got married will typically be separate property. Now, this can differ greatly state to state depending on that state's rules. Equitable distribution is where it gets really messy. And this is a state like Massachusetts. For example, Massachusetts has a list of 18 factors that they consider in the event of a divorce, right? And those factors can vary widely. Earning capacity of the parties, whether or not they have kids, how long they've been married. And so it gets really, really messy. And so this is just another example of why it is incredibly important to have a prenup so that you can make the decisions for yourself and your family and what is best for you. Women should consider prenups all the time. And I think there's a misconception that prenups are meant to protect the man who has all the money and protect it from, this young woman that he's marrying. And that is not the case. That is so far from the truth. I think prenups can protect women for a couple of reasons, but let's back up for a minute. Women have, on average, a net worth of $5,500 for every $12,000 a man has, right? So we're starting at that baseline. In addition to that, we have the motherhood penalty. So we get married, and then once we have kids, the caregiving demands still fall on women, even when those women out-earn their spouses. They still pick up a heavier load when it comes to responsibilities at home. And, when someone gets sick, it's typically the mother who's, staying home. And then especially if she's making less money, because we also have the wage gap, right? And women are earning, I think it's something like 74% for every dollar, 77 cents for every dollar a man earns. She's the one who's sacrificing her career because she makes less money. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so when it comes to a prenup, how can a prenup help solve for that gap? Well, a prenup allows you to contract around state laws, right? So you can say if one party stays home or works less than 25 hours a week, and there is X% discrepancy in wealth between the parties, then so much will be moved to the marital pot, right? So you can effectively, we call this an equalization clause, and there are many ways to do it, but you can effectively reallocate funds from one party that may be separate because that party is a higher earning party and maybe the only earning party at a certain point, to the other party in a separate bank account so that they have their own security. And it's very important, I think, for women just structurally to have access to their own money. Because if you are in an abusive relationship or a relationship that isn't making you happy and not allowing you to feel fulfilled, you should have the ability to leave. Money should not be holding you back from that decision. So the traditional process is one of the reasons that I am so passionate about this company and why we have built this company. So the traditional process says you hire an attorney, the person who is wealthier, who's looking for the prenup, hires a divorce attorney, right? And then they draft a prenup, they draft this entire agreement, and then they tell their usually lower earning or less moneyed future spouse to go find their own attorney. That fully drafted agreement is then effectively lobbed to the other side, and that less wealthy spouse or future spouse is then forced to negotiate against that contract, right? That puts the less moneyed spouse in an inherently disadvantaged position because now they have to, and you'll hear from Lauren's story, now they have to come up with the creative solutions to try and come to an agreement that they feel is fair, which is often, it's gone too far at that point. Most people just give up and say, I'll sign whatever, or they just don't get married. And so, this is where I think the traditional approach really fails. And it's very expensive, right? $10,000 plus in some instances. California is one of the most expensive states to get a prenup. It takes, 6+ weeks. But as I said before, my old firm, it was, over 3 months was required. And so this is where we look to technology, to leverage technology to help solve for all of these problems.
So as Julia mentioned, everything she just said is true. I am a walking, breathing example of what happens if you are the lesser moneyed spouse and you are marrying someone that has a much higher net worth than you. So I went through the traditional prenup process. Everything Julia said is true. I basically got engaged to a guy and he was like, hey, I really want a prenup. He decided, I'm going to go hire this attorney to draft the agreement. And I was playing defense the entire time. What happens is I'm sitting there going, okay, cool. I don't have any money. I have a BMW and a box of Cheez-Its. And now I got to go figure out how do I basically level up and meet him halfway and do this prenup. So what's the first thing I did? I Googled an attorney near me, and I try to figure out, who do I trust to give me the direction that I need to be able to enter into this marriage with confidence. And so after meeting with a couple of different attorneys, all of the attorneys actually said to me, I don't think you should marry this man. I think you should figure out something else. What they should have done in that instance was give me some direction on the different things that I could be doing, like Julia said, find ways to equalize things so that we go into this agreement feeling really, really good. What ended up happening is I finally retained someone that I felt somewhat comfortable with. Our lawyers go back and forth with each other, and you're basically trusting them to make decisions for you. They don't educate you on the different types of things that could occur. So for example, if I was a stay-at-home mom and I decided to quit my job, what would that look like, right? I'm not making very much money right now, but if I quit my job and I stay home to raise the kids, what happens if we get a divorce? You know, that my hard-earned career earning years, I just gave up to raise our kids. And our prenup says that in the event that we aren't married anymore in X amount of years, I don't get anything, right? So I'm basically out on my own with nowhere to go, no money, no savings, and I don't get those years back to make up those earnings. And so what we're trying to relay as something from the traditional prenup process versus the collaborative experience of HelloPrenup is that the most important thing you can do is educate yourself about what it means to actually get a prenup. Whether you're the lesser earning spouse or the higher earning spouse, you want to make sure that there is an equalization in terms of both parties figuring out, how do we make this work for both of us? I also got married and went through the divorce process. And as somebody who's been on literally the entire spectrum of what it means to go through everything and have children and co-parenting, I can tell you there are some things that you want to make sure that you do, and there's some things that you want to make sure you don't. The first is never assume that just because you're hiring an attorney, that they are going to know you and have your best interests in mind. It is up to you to make sure that you have what you need when you enter this marriage. So do your own research, because you are the one that's going to be signing that document along with your attorney, but the terms are binding to you, not them. So make sure when you get a prenup, it's something you feel really good about, you feel like is representing you as well, and you're discussing things like equalization clauses and lump sum payments, and making sure that if I have to take on the domestic labor, that we're also going to make sure that I'm financially compensated for all of the time and energy that I'm spending on the family. The other thing is, you don't want to trust your government to make decisions for you. I have never been the person to say that that's a good idea, and I'm walking living proof that you shouldn't do that. Also, in my divorce, I got nothing, right? It said an ironclad prenup, you were locked out of it. There's nothing that you get, and that ended up being true. So what I should have done is I should have had a better understanding of, this is the contract that you're getting into, and these are the different things that you should be thinking about. What you should be doing is discussing your goals very early and often with people that you trust. Don't just assume that because you're hiring an attorney, they're going to know you and they're going to be able to do things for you. You need to do your research and understand what you're getting into. The other thing you don't want to do is sign anything because you love them. I'm going to prove that I love you. You have a lot more money than me. I'm not marrying you for your money. I'll sign whatever you want. What you really want to do is realize that a prenup is between two parties. It's a collaborative document. There's space for negotiation. If there's something in that agreement that you don't like, come up with a different solution. Is there something else that we can do to make this really fair? And find a way to get those clauses inside your agreement, should your state allow it. The other thing you shouldn't do is just avoid the conversation in general. I think one of the biggest mistakes we see a lot of couples doing is not talking about money enough. And so they leave it until the prenup conversation, and then they're kind of stuck having these really heavy conversations. I think people that talk about their financial goals early and often and include in their daily diet have a much healthier outcome. And so you want to make sure that you're creating an agreement that works for both of you, and that both of your goals are represented in that agreement. The other thing is, a lot of people say, you know what, we're not going to get a prenup. We're just not going to do it because there's not enough time. We are getting married in 3 minutes. Like, it's just not going to work out, or everything's just going to work out. It's going to be fine. I love them. No matter what, it's better to have a plan, right? Even if you put something on paper and you don't expect it to come true, the day that it might come true, you're going to be really glad that you had it. And then lastly, I cannot emphasize this enough, and it's everything Julia just said. Do not discount domestic labor. Women are still taking on the domestic labor, regardless of if you are the breadwinner or the lesser moneyed spouse. And so you want to plan accordingly. Just at least have the conversation with your partner that this is a very true reality. And I want to make sure that domestic labor and everything that's involved with raising our family, taking care of the home or whatever, is accounted for and planned out in our prenup as much as possible.
Amazing. Well, Lauren, as you well know, this is why we created the HelloPrenup process. So it is entirely different than the traditional process, and I'll tell you why. And it's not just the pricing. So the pricing is incredible at $599 per couple as a base cost. That's per couple, right? As opposed to the nationwide average of $2,500 per individual, $5,000 per couple. And you can add on attorneys to this at flat rate pricing. The reason HelloPrenup process is different is because it goes like this. One party signs up, they create an account, and they invite their fiance. Now they individually answer a set of questions in a questionnaire, right? So they can individually put in those desires for their prenup before they ever see a document. It doesn't matter if you're the wealthier or the less wealthy spouse. You're both treated equally. Then you walk through a negotiation phase. And this negotiation phase allows you to resolve any discrepancies or disagreements that you have about those core principles for the prenup. And then you can actually output your document. Now, at any point in that questionnaire, you can contact an attorney for a Q&A session, and you can ask them questions. And then after your negotiation section, you can actually hire an attorney for full representation, which is effectively the same as what you would be getting if you just went the traditional route and started with an attorney from, A, right? And the attorney will not only sit there and go through your prenup, review it with you, advise you on the terms, but they can also edit it. So if there's anything really specific that needs to be edited or customized for your specific situation, they can do that. Now, if you don't want an attorney and you're in a state that doesn't require it, you have the right to waive attorney representation, and we actually include an option for you to do so. And there will be a clause in your prenup that says you've chosen not to hire an attorney. So again, do you need an attorney for your agreement? It's not a requirement in most states. We've had prenups in, I think, California and all over the country in varying states that have been enforced when people did not have an attorney, right? So it's not required. But one of the things that is really important to consider is that if you do have legal questions, if you do want advice on the agreement, and the majority of our HelloPrenup couples do choose to hire an attorney, and they are able to through HelloPrenup in a way that, again, is really cost effective and really efficient. And you can get it done in still a matter of, in certain instances, a week, right? As opposed to months. So that additional layer of, peace of mind, I'll call it, extra customization, can be really, really beneficial. And we highly encourage customers to look into it or consider it. There are only 4 instances throughout the US where you absolutely, statutorily need an attorney in order to get a prenup. So in California, it's waiving or modifying spousal support. Alabama, South Carolina, West Virginia, no matter what, if you're entering into a prenup, you must have an attorney represent you. And then other states, like I said before, Massachusetts, it's recommended, right? You don't have to, but it is an extra layer of protection. So it is something you should consider if you do have legal questions or would like representation. Okay. How to bring up a prenup. This is you, Lauren.
All right, so we're all fired up. How do we actually go home and ask our partners for this thing? How do we propose the prenup? Well, there's a couple ways to do it, and there's a couple ways to definitely not do it. The first is, do not wait until you're engaged and assume your partner's going to say yes. This is one of those topics that could be triggering. It's one of those topics where if it's not discussed early, it could potentially feel like a bait and switch. But most importantly, it's a really fun, romantic conversation. Yes, it's romantic. Why? Because you're about to get really, really deep about things that matter to you. Money is related to everything we do. And so if you can discuss money with your partner and make sure you guys are on the same page about how we're spending and saving, you're going to get deeper and closer, and it's going to feel super romantic. So I highly recommend doing it sooner rather than later. The other thing you're going to want to do is you don't want to sit there and say, sign this prenup or else. That is never going to work. If you put somebody in a position to say, I need a prenup or I can't get married, it's actually going to have the opposite effect. Even if you feel this way, the better way to position it is, I love you so much, and I want to make sure that we both feel financially secure no matter what happens. Because at the end of the day, the beautiful thing about a prenup is it's one of the only times in your life where you get to predict the future and make sure it happens for you. Prenups are highly enforced. So if there's something that you want to have happen to you, no matter what, you want to make sure it's documented in your prenup. This is actually a very romantic opportunity to say, I care about you so much that I want to make sure that no matter what happens in this relationship, you and I are both financially protected. That way, we don't have to worry about finances, and we don't have to worry about if this thing doesn't make it all the way into the sunset. So getting on the same page with the prenup is actually a very romantic thing to do, and positioning it as, I care so much about you, this is something that's really important for both of us, is the best way through. And again, the last thing you don't want to do, avoid the conversation altogether because it might feel super awkward. It's only awkward if you don't bring it up. Divorce is awkward, not bringing up prenups. And if you are like me and you like alliteration and you need a couple things just to remind yourself when you're getting ready to actually propose the prenup, you can refer to the 3 Tamigos, which is time. So timing is everything. If your partner is the type of person that does meetings all day on Monday and you're like, I'm going to Zoom home on Monday and drop the prenup question, that's probably the worst time to do it, right? You want to do it when your partner is most receptive. Are they most relaxed on the weekends? Is there a time where you guys have a scheduled date night that you want to bring it up? When are you going to have the most receptive opportunity to bring this up in a place where your partner feels safe and for you guys to be able to have a really good conversation? The other thing is how you say it. So everything is about how you say it, right? When it comes to a prenup, you're not demanding, you're proposing. This is something that's really important to you. This is something that's really important for both of you. How do we make it a conversation that's about we and not just I need? And then again, this is about togetherness. This isn't just about money. This is about how do we make sure that we get to keep all of the amazing things and all of the amazing reasons why we want to get married, the forefront of why we're married, right? Finances is one of the biggest reasons why marriages don't work out. And so if we can have these conversations early and often and not make this about money for the rest of our lives, why not have these conversations now and make sure that we're aligned as we enter into this marriage? And one of our favorite things that we refer to that we basically coined with Elvis was prenups don't equal failure, just like health insurance doesn't equal bad health. All right, if you're like, okay, Lauren, I still don't get it. Like literally, what do you want me to say to my partner when it comes to bringing this up? So we have a couple of different archetypes. If you're a conversational Kathy, you're like, listen, talking is my thing. You're going to go home and you're going to say, babe, how do you see us managing finances while married? And you just let the conversation flow. Basically, what you're going to want to get across at that point is figuring out, how do we want to manage finances now? What are our long-term goals? Are we saving together? Are we spending together? What does that look like? And if you're like, oh my God, clutch my pearls, there's no way I'm going home and asking that. I'm much better via text because I want to take my time and I want to make sure that I can ask and type things out appropriately. Literally text your fiance or your partner or whatever and say, how do you see us managing finances while married? Because that is going to just open the door for the actual prenup conversation without having to say the P word of, babe, I really want a prenup, come home immediately and let's talk about it. Or you are a straight shooter and you're like, babe, I'd love for us to consider a prenup so we don't have to worry about finances. Go for it. That is my cup of tea too. I think if you could be very direct with your partner and that works for you guys, bring it up and see how it lands, but use timing to your advantage to make sure they're in the right headspace to discuss all the things that come with it. If you're the romantic type, you can literally propose the prenup. We have seen it done before. You get on one knee and you say, babe, will you make me the happiest partner alive and get a prenup with me? It's cute, it's romantic. And I'm telling you, once you have the actual prenup conversation with them, you're going to feel a whole lot closer to them and you're going to want to propose all over again. And if you're the type where you're like, okay, I'm so scared, like I have a partner that I know is not going to be receptive to this, or I feel like this is such a hard conversation because you know, I don't like talking about money, or this is something that has never really been easy for me. I think the way to think about this is to stop and ask yourself, why am I scared to ask for something that will only make our marriage stronger? Because again, a prenup is scientifically proven to bring you closer together to your partner. And so if you're having trouble asking or bringing this up and using that prenup as a tool to get on the same page, I would dig really deep and try to figure out why, because again, prenups are only designed to make you stronger. And for those of us that already have the ring and the kids and we're established and we've been married for a minute, what options do you have? So Julia, is there anything that married people can do when it comes to the benefits of?
Yes, absolutely. So number one, keep in mind, a prenup must be signed, sealed, delivered before you get married. It is effective upon marriage. You cannot say after your wedding, I forgot, can I just have a redo? It doesn't work. In that instance, you need to get a postnup. And a postnup is effectively a prenup for couples that are already married. And there are some really key differences between a prenup and a postnup with respect to how states recognize them. So postnups aren't recognized across the country, right? There are some states that just won't allow postnups at all. They just think they're against public policy and they won't allow it. And something to think about with a postnup is if you have a choice, and this is really if you have a choice between, you're like on the cusp, you're getting married in a week, you're like, should I get a prenup or just do a postnup? Postnups are generally scrutinized more by courts because there is this disproportionate bargaining power once you're already married, right? So courts know that, judges know that, and so they are probably less enforceable across the board than a prenup. That being said, postnups are becoming more and more popular and more widely accepted among the states. And so a postnup really allows you to do the same thing that a prenup does. You can delineate what assets you want to remain yours and yours alone in the event of a divorce, and then what assets you would like to remain or to remain marital or community in the event of a divorce. And postnups, I think, are really beneficial for either couples who didn't have the chance to get a prenup, they didn't know about a prenup, and then, you know, maybe one of you started a business or entered into some type of venture that you really want to be protected, or in instances where there is some marital strife or disagreement with respect to finances. And I have seen time and time again, couples who are on the rocks getting a postnup, and it actually saves their marriage because it allows them to get really transparent and really clear with each other about how they want to hold assets. I've also seen couples who just fundamentally, they love each other, they want to stay married, but fundamentally they just disagree on money. Like they just have different money personalities. One's a spender, one's a saver. And this is another instance where a postnup can kind of be a marriage saving technique. So again, they can only be done after marriage. Prenups can only be done before marriage. And both are advisable if you are interested in this type of document, but you're already married.
Okay, so now we would love to open up the chat to all of our attendees. If you have any questions, please throw them in. We really want to give you guys as much information as we can. I think I'm seeing the chat. Here we go. Okay. Okay. The first one I see is my wife and I both also went to RPI. I think, oh yeah, actually that's Sarah Beth that you're talking about. That's our CTO. That's so cute. Hi, Megan. That's amazing. Okay. And then, okay. So first question, if you get a prenup in one state, but then move to a new state at some point during the marriage, will it still hold up in the new state with all the same rules and protections?
Yes. So there is something called a choice of law clause in a prenup, and you contract to the state in which you plan to reside. Now, many people move, right? We live in the Zoom era where people can work remotely. And so this is becoming more and more common. And so what would happen in the event of a divorce is if, let's say that you got married and contracted to a prenup in New York, and you plan to live in New York, but you ended up moving 2 years later to California. You get divorced in California. Well, your choice of law provision will say that you contracted in New York. So what will happen is the substantive law in your divorce will be New York divorce law. In the procedural law in your divorce will be California. Now, I'm getting really like detailed about it, but yes, it will, your prenup will still be valid. We have full faith and credit in the United States, so states have to acknowledge other states' contracts. They cannot invalidate them purely based off of the fact that the contract is from a different state.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, next question. Do you need two separate prenups when getting married, one for the man and the other for the woman, or it's just one agreement that works for both?
Great question, Henry. So no, it is just one agreement. In that one agreement aligns everything for both of you. So you will each have a separate property section. You will each have a financial schedule that will detail all of your income, assets, debt, all of it. And all of that will be contained in one document that you both sign.
Amazing. Do we offer postnups, Julia?
We don't yet, but check back. We plan to.
Yes, yes. Next question. What is the cost of the optional for-hire attorneys?
Great question. So we offer attorneys at 2 tiers. $99 for a 20-minute Q&A session. You can do as many Q&A sessions as you want. And this is a session where you can ask questions. Where do I put this on my financial schedule? Should I include this or that clause about inheritance? And then for $699, you can have representation. And this is where the attorney will go through your agreement, review it, maybe make recommendations and even make edits to the agreement. That attorney will also sign off on the agreement. So they will actually have a paragraph where they sign off as your attorney saying that they represented you for that prenup. And so you can do an entire HelloPrenup for, you know, everything, both couples, representation for $1,997. And so I always like to highlight that because that is dramatically less expensive than the traditional $2,500 per couple starting.
Oh yeah, and you're going to get it done in record time too. Okay. Do prenups drafted using HelloPrenup hold up well in court?
Yes. So we have had a few couples get divorced at this point. And one of whom actually wrote us a review recently stating that not only was their HelloPrenup upheld, but it also saved them $95,000. We have had other couples reach out letting us know that they were getting divorced and they were able to settle on the terms of their prenup. And so we're really proud at the quality and the use of the document in divorces. Yeah, and so, you know, I think we will see more of this as time goes on, but we're really proud of how our prenups have held up in court.
Yes. Okay. If one partner is a foreign national and owns assets, example, real estate or stocks outside the US, are those included under American prenups? And if we decide to get a marriage license in a foreign country, does that require a separate prenup?
So if you have foreign assets, they get detailed still in your financial schedule in your US prenup. Even if you own assets in the UK, you still detail them in your HelloPrenup agreement. And if you have, I think the second part of that question was, if you have a marriage license in a foreign country, that doesn't require a separate prenup. I mean, because it's a US prenup. So if you plan to live in the UK, HelloPrenup's not the best solution for you because I can't tell you if a HelloPrenup US agreement would be upheld from a UK court. But if you just happen to get married somewhere else, like, you know, so many people get married abroad, right? You still have a US prenup because you live here.
Amazing. Okay. What if your future husband wants your marital income to support his daughter in medical school and you don't feel that is fair or appropriate?
Well, this is the beauty of a prenup, is you get to talk about it, right? And none of it is presumed. You can have a conversation about what your financial picture should look like as a married couple and what you feel comfortable with. And I think this is one of those conversations where it's incredibly important to be open and honest and vulnerable and not come from a place of defensiveness, because I find that most of these conversations, they're tough, right? Even just the mere fact that you're bringing up a prenup, it's a tough conversation. And so that vulnerability and openness around the why something bothers you or the why you want X, Y, or Z in that agreement is very important. And in this instance, I mean, you have a right to say, I worked really, really hard for my money and my career, and I want to protect some of that and use that for myself and for us. And I think that's totally warranted and fair.
Amazing. Do we have a discount code? We do. We are going to share that at the end of all of the Q&As. Regarding the recording, we will send it out to all attendees on our behalf, and WSC, I believe, will do the same. And then another post-up question. So can post-ups have the equalization clauses or domestic labor clauses?
It depends on the state. It depends on the state. Post-ups can get very detailed or complex, depending on the state that you're in and the requirements of that state. Whether you had a prenup before that is being amended and basically creating a postnup, or whether you're starting the postnup from scratch. So it is highly dependent on the scenario and the state.
Alrighty. I think that was our last one. I'm going to do a final scroll to make sure.
And I just have to over clarify, because I am an attorney, right? So if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be a good lawyer. Of course, everything that I'm saying here, this is general information. This is not individual legal advice. So if you are looking for individual legal advice, you should contact a licensed attorney in your state. And no prenup is ever guaranteed to be upheld. People love to use the term ironclad. Nothing is guaranteed, whether you get a prenup through an attorney, the traditional route, or whether you go through a service like HelloPrenup. And if you have additional questions on any of that, you can feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to provide more information.
All right, that was it from us. Thank you guys so much. If you guys have any other questions, please reach out to us at HelloPrenup.com. You can also sign up for your prenup immediately at HelloPrenup.com if you'd like. Creating an account is free. If you want to go home and talk to your honey and make sure you're aligned on all the prenup things too, that's okay too. Then you guys can both join at HelloPrenup.com. And if you're interested in joining the WSC, go for it. They're offering 30% off on their monthly or yearly membership. And HelloPrenup is super excited to offer $50 off your prenup using code HelloPrenupWSC50. Thank you guys so much for attending. This was so much fun. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you all so much. This was so much fun for us.